Andrea Giles, and you're listening to the Heal from Infidelity podcast, episode number 128, Financial Infidelity with Tracy Coenen. Hello, and welcome to the Heal from Infidelity podcast, where courageous women learn not only to heal from their spouse's betrayal, but to become the boldest, truest, most decisive, and confident versions of themselves ever. If you know there's more for you than the life you're currently living, but don't quite know how to get there, you are in the right place. Stick around to learn how to create a life that will knock your own socks off. Is it possible? It is, and I'm here to show you how. I'm your host, Andrea Giles. Are you ready? Let's dive in. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Heal from Infidelity. Today, I have a special treat for you. I brought a guest in named Tracy Coenen. You're going to hear all about her. You're going to hear what she does. We're going to be talking about all things financial infidelity. Before we dive in, I just want to say to you that this may be an episode that's a little bit uncomfortable, and I want you to listen to it anyway. Whether you are staying in your marriage, whether you are going, there are gems in this episode that we talked about that I believe everyone needs to hear. So I invite you to understand that the discomfort means nothing about if you have to stay, if you have to leave. Sometimes our discomfort just raises our awareness of things to look at, things maybe to question, to check into, to ask questions about. So go ahead, listen, dive in. I can't wait for you to hear the conversation. Hello, everybody. Welcome, welcome. Today, I have an amazing, amazing guest that I've been so looking forward to bringing to you. Her name is Tracy Coenen. She is a wealth of knowledge about all things financial, getting money that is mishandled. I'll let her speak to the things that she does here. But today we're going to be having a discussion about financial infidelity. It's something that I hear come up where my clients sometimes don't know where money is. They feel beholden to their spouse as far as their ability to spend money. And today we're going to talk all about this. But before we dive into it, I want you to meet Tracy. Tracy, can you please tell us about yourself? First of all, welcome to the show. So happy to have you here. And please give us an introduction. Tell us about yourself, how you got into what you do. Tell us what you do. It's fascinating. Take it away. Go ahead. Tell us all about yourself.
Well, I'm excited to be here too. I am a forensic accountant, and that means that I find money. I do fraud investigations. A bunch of that is on the corporate side where I'm looking for money that executives are stealing or messing around with, or companies that are fighting with one another about contracts gone bad and who caused who to lose money. And I deal with all those money issues, and I'm an expert witness, and that's all cool. But I also work in the divorce space. And so I am finding money that spouses are hiding. I am helping people get proper settlements, because you can't get a proper settlement in a divorce unless you know how much money there is. So we're figuring out how much money is there. What has our money been spent on? Why isn't there more in the accounts? Are there accounts elsewhere? All sorts of money shenanigans. I'm looking into that. And so I do divorce work for typically people who are higher earners, higher asset values. But last year I created the Divorce Money Guide, which is my resource for average people going through divorce who have, more typical situations, aren't the high earners, but they still have concerns and they need to understand more about their money.
Mm-hmm. I love it. And tell me about how has that landed? Like, how have people been finding all kinds of money? Tell us about that.
I can't tell you how many times I've been told, I wish I had a resource like this when I was getting divorced 10 years ago. So there are so many people who are regretful because they didn't know things about their money when they were getting divorced, and they settled anyway. And that's one of the things that I see women doing far too often, is accepting a settlement without having enough information about the finances to know, is this a good or bad settlement? And let's be realistic. We've come a long way, baby, but men are still more often in charge of the money, and men are still more often in charge of the family finances. And that gives them an opportunity to shuttle money away to accounts and places that we don't know about. And just, they have more information. They know the full scope of what we're dealing with financially. And you don't, if you haven't been actively involved. And so I want to change that.
Oh, it's so awesome. So awesome. So good. Yes. Okay. So can you tell me what, how do you define financial infidelity?
Financial infidelity is a lie about the money to your partner, and it's a lie that matters. I am not talking about little white lies, although those can be precursors to bigger things. I'm really talking about the things that you know in your heart of hearts, if your spouse knew about this spending or this transaction, that they would be upset about it.
Yeah.
So for one woman, buying a pair of shoes and hiding it under the bed, she knows her husband is probably not going to care about it, but she just doesn't want to have the discussion about why she needed another pair of shoes. That probably isn't financial infidelity. The other wife,
Okay.
whose husband really is keeping tabs on the money and is really concerned about how they're spending, maybe because they have a super tight budget or they have, some debt they're trying to dig their way out of. And she knows he would lose his mind if he knew that I bought the shoes. That's financial infidelity. But I do have to make
Okay.
one distinction
Love it.
here. When
Okay.
we talk about financial abuse, we've kind of got a whole different animal there. There is financial abuse where some spouses are extremely controlling about the spending, and you might be concealing some of your spending because of that abuse situation. And that's a whole different thing that we're just going to set
Hmm.
aside for right now.
Okay. Yep. Definitely can see why somebody would do that in that situation, right?
Mhm.
Okay. So let's dive into this piece around infidelity. Okay. This is something I hear all the time. There's two things. Okay. One is I have people who are going through divorce, actively going through divorce, and they are so over the stress of it, the anxiety of it. And I can't tell you how many times I've heard people say, I just don't even care anymore, right? I don't even care anymore. I just want to be done and move on with my life. And every single time, what they hear from me is, whoa, 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 hold it, right? Because we often want to make these emotional decisions to feel better, and then it can totally bite you in the butt, right? So, what would you say to a woman in that situation? Let's say that there is money she might not even be aware of, has never really been in the know about the comings and goings of all the money, where it is, where it's put away, all the things. And she kind of just wants to be done and turn a blind eye to really looking at what the
Mhm.
assets are, really looking at what she legally is entitled to. What would you, in your position, say to that?
There's so much here, but it has to
Yeah.
be strategic. There is strategically a right time to say, I am now going to settle. And that time is when we know enough about the money. Working with your attorney, maybe with a divorce coach, maybe with a forensic accountant like me, these people can be a little bit more of an objective sounding board to help you make that decision as to when it's strategic. Now, here's the unfortunate thing is in so many divorces, they will try to wear you down. They're dragging it out. They're making it as emotionally painful as possible. They're making it as expensive as possible. You've put tens of thousands of dollars into your attorney and you've maybe run out of money. They want you to run out of money. They want to keep abusing you financially through the divorce process. And if we are going to make a settlement without all the information, we just want to make sure that we're thinking strategically about it and making sure what the cost and benefit is of settling today. But I do see too many women walking away too early.
Yeah.
Well, he says, I can keep the house if I don't touch his retirement account. And so I'm willing to make that trade off. Hold on a second.
Yeah.
We need to evaluate what's in that retirement account. What is this house worth? How much do you owe on it? Can you afford to keep it? And are you getting a fair share if that's the way it goes? I'll tell you what, 9 times out of 10, this is no gift to you from your husband. You guys are getting
Yeah.
divorced for a reason, and this is not a gift, and he's not being generous.
Right. Yep. Perfect. It's so you're saying it's about let's just look at the numbers, right? Like really sit down, look at the numbers and make a decision from that rather than, oh, I get the house, he gets this thing. It sounds fair, right? Not so much. Not so much.
Right. Or I
right?
have cases where there's a business involved and he is going to keep the business and he's going to run it. And he says, hey, I'll let you keep the house if you don't touch the business. Well, until you know what that business is worth, you can't make that decision. And I see, I work primarily with women, which is why I talk about the perspective of women and I say husbands, but this of course applies equally. If it's wife and wife, it can happen. If it's
Yep.
roles reversed, husband is the stay at home and wife is the breadwinner. So please don't be distracted by my language when I say the husband is doing this. But too many times what I see is the husband pushing for that settlement. Sign off, sign off. This is the best deal you're ever going to get. I'm withdrawing this offer if you don't sign, and all these kinds of things. And some really helpful language that I have surrounding that is, I am happy to make a swift decision about settling once I have all the information. You have not provided me with X, Y, and Z, and I think those are important documents. And when I have that information in my hands, I would be happy to look it over and make a swift decision.
Oh, boom. Yes. Clear, clean. Yes. Powerful. I love it.
Because I'll tell you what, they don't withhold documents just out of convenience. It's not like, oh, it was too hard to get that document. No, they're withholding it because it says something that they feel is going to damage them in the divorce, right? I don't want you to know I spent this money, or I don't want you to know what the balance is in that account, or I don't want you to be able to see I took $25,000 out of the retirement account last year when I shouldn't have done that. There's something they don't want you to see.
Yep. Okay. So as you know, my clients are mostly dealing with infidelity involving another person, right? But there's something that comes up a lot in regards to this where money is pulled to pay for the infidelity, right? To pay for the trips, to pay for the hotels, to pay for gifts and trips and all kinds of things. And the blow of the infidelity for my clients is usually enough for them. They can be disgusted with that. They can be upset about it, but often just kind of leave it be. What is your thought on that? On the financial price of infidelity?
Right. So I like to talk about it as romantic infidelity and financial infidelity, right?
Okay.
And there is that overlap there. So financial infidelity can occur in a lot of different ways, but one of the ways it occurs, and one of the primary ways that I see, is spending on an affair partner. Every penny, every dollar that was spent on that affair partner is half yours, and you can get that money back. And I am a huge advocate of figuring out how much was spent on that affair partner and going to get your half back. Now you might say, well, the money's been spent, it's gone. How am I going to get it back? Here's how we typically get it back in cases. There is equity in the house that you're splitting, or there's a retirement account that you're splitting, or a bank account that you're splitting. If you are in a marriage where you guys don't have any assets and there's really nothing to split, you're probably out of luck. But in most marriages, there is something to split. There might be value in cars, homes, retirement accounts. And so if you were going to split a retirement account 50-50, but you find out that, I can prove that $30,000 was spent on this affair, you can probably get your 50% of that house or retirement account plus half of the $30,000. That's the way we make it fair. And I'm a huge advocate for going after that. But the key is you have to be able to prove how much was spent. You can't, you say to your attorney, he was spending money on his affair partner. You've got to be able to prove it.
Yes. Fair. Okay. Another thing that I see a lot is women who feel trapped in their marriages because their husbands make the money. Okay. I'm talking about some of my clients who are stay-at-home moms, or who have maybe a little part-time work, or maybe they had a career and gave it up to be a mom, right? And their spouse brings in the bulk of the money, manages the money, pays the bills, things like that. And I have clients who feel completely trapped by that, like that the money's not theirs. They see it as not quite theirs, and that they are beholden to their spouse to make any decisions for themselves because of that situation. I'm thinking of one client in particular that just recently reached out, and she's really in this right now. There's a lot of money there floating around, right? There's a lot of money, there are a lot of assets, things like that. But in her mind, it's very complicated, and none of it's really hers because it's all in his name. I would love to hear your thoughts on that. This is very common. And I will just add before you answer, I know this story well because it was mine. It was my story. I was married to he was an attorney that worked for Google. We lived in the Bay Area. I was a stay-at-home mom and he made the money. He had the Google stock. He had all of those things. And I remember when I first found out that he was cashing out Google stock to pay for some things without my knowledge, I remember being upset by it, but then going, well, it's his anyway. Like he makes this money, right? And I can see it now, right? I can see now that that was financial infidelity. Absolutely. But what would you tell that girl 10 years ago, or my women who are in that same situation that don't quite feel like it's theirs and feel trapped by that?
It's so common. It's a very common feeling. And many of the women that I work with are in that exact situation. The first thing I want to say is, please don't be ashamed that you maybe don't know what's going on with the money, that you don't have any control of the money over the money, or that you don't have any money that you consider your own right now, because it's super common. But what I want women to think about is finding a way to have money of your own, opening your own bank account in your name alone that you can get some money into. I am not advocating secret accounts. Again, unless you're in an abuse situation, totally different animal. We're not going to talk about that. But in the average marriage, opening an account where you can start putting some money that only you can access. I do recommend an open book scenario with your spouse so that you both know what's going on with all the money. I also recommend opening a credit card that's only in your name. You can get a credit card based on household income. It's not your income, it's household income. And so that credit card is protected. No one can close it without you knowing. No one can charge on it. It's yours. It's your backup. It's your security. If you are on a path towards divorce, if you are going to be filing divorce and you have money in an account that is a joint account, I am a huge advocate for taking money out of that account and putting it into one in your name only. So the second you're getting ready to file for divorce, you take money out of that account. I recommend talking with your attorney first. Attorneys have different ideas about how much to take out of that account. If you're a stay-at-home, I suggest being aggressive with how much is taken out of that account. Some attorneys say, oh, you can only take half, things like that. But that is one way where you protect yourself financially. And I know that for a lot of women right now, they're probably cringing, saying, oh my God, taking money out of that joint account doesn't feel good right now. It feels a little dishonest. And here's what I'm going to tell you. I have been involved in countless divorces where divorce was filed, he drained your joint bank account and shut it, and you had nothing. And you waited 2 months to go to court to have a judge order him to give you some of that money. How are you going to eat in that 2 month time period? The husbands will not hesitate to drain that account. And I don't want you to feel bad whatsoever about taking money and putting it in a safe account for yourself. You will have to account for it in the divorce. You may, quote, owe some money back to him. Who cares? You made sure that you and your kids could eat and have a roof over your head while that divorce was ongoing.
Yes, I've heard way too many situations too. A former client, again, when it first kind of hit the fan and she said, I'm getting divorced, I'm divorcing you. He drained their account down to 1 penny, literally left 1 penny in the account, and with children to feed and, very, very difficult situation for many years. It was hard for many years.
And here's the other fun one. They drain the account and then the mortgage payment goes through and puts the account negative. And guess what? If your name's on that account, you owe that overdraft. It can get ugly, which is why I'm super aggressive in my stance on taking money out of the joint account, particularly if you don't have an income source of your own. If you are working outside of the home and you have decent money coming in, it's different, right? You are not going to be homeless. You are not going to go hungry. But if you're a stay-at-home and you don't have a source of income and your spouse does, your spouse is going to be fine. They've got income coming in. You have to protect yourself for what may be an ongoing divorce battle where you're not getting any support payments at all.
Yep. And I think the mindset shift here is it's not about being vindictive. It's not about being ugly and sticking it to them. It's about taking care of yourself, right? It's about protecting yourself, protecting the mouth that you're feeding, right? The home that you live in, all of those things. Yeah.
And you'll hear people say, well, but then you might get in front of a judge and the judge might order you to put some of the money back. Okay, fine. Then you put some of the money back. Ooh, well, the judge might say that there were some overdraft fees and now you are the one who has to pay those overdraft fees. Oh, okay, fine. But guess what? You still got to feed your kids in the meantime. Like when you
Yeah.
weigh what could happen to you, what a judge might do, like you're not going to get like some big punishment. You're not going to jail. That money belonged to you, just like it belonged to your spouse. Talk with your attorney so you're doing it strategically, right? And so that your attorney is saying, in our state, the law says this. So here's what I would advise you to do. And then you're cool.
I love it. Okay. I know that you deal mostly with people who are getting divorced, right? I have a question though around people who are choosing to stay after infidelity. There are many things to navigate. There are many things to learn to, to change the ways that my clients think about the infidelity. There's a lot there for them to navigate. I think that sometimes what can happen is in an attempt to hurry and kind of get back to some kind of sense of normalcy, they'll want to sweep things under the rug. And I don't encourage that, right? I don't encourage that. I'm about, let's deal with this all head on, really look at it, look at what's sustainable going forward, right? My question for you is in regards to money, where the majority of the time there has been money spent on the romantic partner, right? Or if it's not a romantic partner, if it's other forms of, there's all kinds of things, different apps and different connecting with people in different ways that are not necessarily in person, but some of them cost money, right?
Mm-hmm.
What would you say to people who want to stay married, who see that their spouse is making an effort to mend things? What's your advice about the money, about what to do? But let's say that 10 grand was spent, that you can prove it on hotels, on airplanes, on gifts, or even 5 grand. What would you recommend they do about reconciling that money?
The first step is, if you're going to stay in the marriage, to make sure that you have full visibility into the finances going forward and that you're protecting yourself. That's the first way that you protect yourself, is by making those finances be an open book so you can see if there was spending like that ever again. If you're choosing to stay married, you're not really getting that money back ever, right? Because it's kind of all one big pot. But to protect yourself going forward, you make sure that you are actively involved in what's going on with the money. So if your spouse is still going to be the one responsible for paying the bills and moving money around, that's okay, as long as you have logins to accounts that you go in on a regular basis, minimum once a month, maybe even more often, looking at what is the balance, what has money been spent on, so you would catch any of this kind of spending again. That's the first thing to think about. The second thing to think about is a postnuptial agreement. Now, we've all heard of prenups, the prenuptial agreement, and that's basically a contract that you enter into before you get married, thus the word prenuptial. And it says, if we ever split, here's what's going to happen with the money. And you can get super detailed with how the money and how things will be divided, and does anyone owe anyone support. You can do the exact same thing if you're already married, and it's called a postnuptial because you're already after your nuptials. And I see people who are recovering from infidelity do these to protect themselves. Things like, it might say, if we do end up splitting because of another instance of infidelity, there might be kind of penalty sort of things in there. That's one way to approach it. Another way to approach it is to not necessarily put a penalty in there, but to just say, okay, buddy, here's what's going to happen. This is how we're agreeing it's going to go down with the money if we do split. So that can be a really great protective type of thing. And when I know that to some people, if you're trying to heal your marriage, this sounds really confrontational or negative, but I think it can be spun as something as part of a larger way for me to feel security in re-engaging in that relationship.
Yes, I see that too. I see it as I'm really showing my commitment, right? I'll put my money where my mouth is, basically, right? Saying I'm so committed to being faithful, that I'm willing to sign this thing that would cost me money if I weren't, right? Yeah, I see that too. I can see it being a great source of comfort and confidence boosting to my clients that that is there, that no matter what happens, I'm taken care of. I'm fine. I don't need to be afraid of that piece, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I think that if you look at it from that lens of how can we ensure a rock solid future rather than going back and, well, you spent this and dragging that piece out, to me, it sounds much more proactive, forward thinking of how can we make sure that we don't get into this situation again and protect both parties in this, right? No matter what happens. So I love that. That's great. Thank you. Okay, so tell me this. Where are some good places for people to even go learn what their financial rights are? I know it varies from state to state, but tell me where people can learn about that.
The safest place to start with it all is to assume that you own 50-50 everything in your marriage. Yes,
Okay.
the laws do vary by state, but unless you have a prenup in place, as a general rule, things are kind of going to get sorted out 50-50. And if there's any divorce attorneys listening, they're cringing right now saying, well, but if, etc. Here's what I just want you to think about 50-50. Because there are times when you, maybe as a stay-at-home, you might be entitled to 70% of the assets, and that's all cool. But 50-50 as a starting point to think about is important because you will probably hear during your divorce, you're not going to get a penny of my retirement. You're not entitled to anything out of this house. I'm going to leave you broke and homeless, and none of that's true. So start with the mindset of this is at least half mine. And
Okay.
then from there, honestly, your divorce attorney is a really good place to start because as the state laws differ from state to state, they're going to know specifically what's going to apply to you. Yes, you can go Google, what happens with the house, and you're going to find general information. But then again, what your state laws say are going to be very specific. So that's how I recommend starting to get your arms around
Okay.
this financial thing. But I do recommend that when you're going to talk to your attorney about this, that you go in with a plan and with a list of questions that you want to ask so that you approach this strategically. Divorce attorneys are expensive and they usually bill by the hour. So you want to make the most of your time with them and you don't want to forget questions. You don't want to be emailing them 20 times after your meeting because every time they have to
Okay.
look at an email or respond, they're going to charge you. So having a good
Okay.
plan about what you want to talk about with your attorney to understand this financial stuff is a really great way to approach it.
All right. Yeah. So maybe spending time beforehand, researching as much as you can on your own, doing some good Google searches, and then having more specific questions to your situation, right? Not just the general things that you can Google, right? You don't want to
Right.
pay your lawyer hundreds of dollars for something you can Google, right?
Right.
So
The trap
maybe,
with
yeah, go
Google
ahead.
is that, there's a lot you can find. It's hard to know what's reputable, what's reliable, what's not. So think of
Yeah.
Google as a great starting point to get some ideas about where you're heading and then refine that with your attorney. Or if you're
Perfect.
working with a divorce coach or a forensic accountant, someone who can help you a little more, that's a great thing to do.
Okay. Yep. Perfect. Okay. Next question for you I'd love to talk about is if there's listeners that suspect their spouse of financial infidelity, how do you recommend they start looking into it, deal with it? Tell me your thoughts on that.
Well, the first thing is to figure out, is there financial infidelity or not? And we
Mm-hmm.
look for red flags, which are signs that something is occurring. They're not proof. We're not there yet, but they are the signs that something is going wrong. Looking for things like changes in behavior, someone becoming more secretive about the money, restricting your access to money when previously maybe it was more open, or restricting your access to information, getting you to sign documents without letting you read them or understand them. All these kinds of things are concerning behaviors. So I rattle off a list like this and people say, but I don't know. Am I overblowing it in my mind? Am I minimizing it? I don't know how worried to be. So I put together a quiz, the red flag quiz, where
Mm.
you take 3 minutes, answer about 15 questions about how the money is handled in your marriage, some of the signs that you may have seen, you check them off for me, and I tell you how likely it is that you have financial infidelity in your marriage. So that's the first
So
part
good.
is Yeah, it's kind of deciding, Houston, do we have a problem?
I
And
love
if you
it.
end up
Hmm.
saying, you know what, all signs point to yes, there is a problem, my first recommendation is don't say anything just yet. Start gathering information, start downloading bank statements, start making copies of tax returns and other important financial documents. Protect yourself first. Because again, just like we talked about with that bank account being drained, when you let on that you might know that something is going on with the money, you may lose access to accounts. Accounts may be closed. Your name may be taken off. Who knows? So I always recommend gathering the information first before you say anything. And to anyone who this feels icky, don't be feeling icky about it. If your name is on an account, you have a legal right to that information. And there is nothing wrong with you downloading statements and saving them somewhere in the cloud where they're safe and they can never disappear.
I love it. Yeah. Yeah. I think that for a lot of my clients, the infidelity, like the romantic infidelity was, for many of them, it was a one-off thing, right? It was this thing that it was anyway. But for some, it's not, right? For some, there are patterns, there's a history of it. And some of the mindset that goes on around it, there's often grandiosity, right? Of thinking I'm above the rules don't apply to me. I'm bigger than them. I can kind of bend things the way that I want, and it works out for me. And I can see how financial infidelity could go very much hand in hand with the kind of infidelity I'm used to talking about. The rules don't quite apply to me. I can bend them, right? Tell me, do you see this a lot? That kind of
All the time.
grandiosity? Yeah, yeah,
All the time. They think they're so clever, they're so smart, they're entitled to do it. A lot of it
yes.
comes from, again, in working with a lot of stay-at-home moms, a lot of that
Hmm.
entitlement comes from I made the money, it's mine, I can do what I want. They also know in many of these situations that their wife is not looking at the finances. And so she'll never know if I siphon some money off, if I get a secret credit card. You know, they certainly feel very powerful. There are so many parallels and there's so much overlap between that romantic infidelity and the financial infidelity. And those attitudes are so, so important, which is why when I'm talking about like, look for a change in behavior in your spouse, I actually, many times, if we get further into it, I talk about them being secretive about their whereabouts, them hiding their phone, never letting that phone out of their hands and stuff. And unfortunately, it often relates to that romantic infidelity that then has a financial component to it. So they're committing the financial infidelity at the same time.
Yeah, yep. Makes sense, right? They often go hand in hand. And if I can get away with one, right? And I don't mean that in a, I don't know, that sounds really harsh, but that's kind of the mindset of while they're in it, is I can, no one has to know, right? It would be a very easy place to go, a very easy place to go to what can I pull off here in the finances? How can I hide it? No one has to know.
Well, and let's remember that as a general rule, affairs aren't free. They cost money to be involved in an
No,
affair. Maybe a one night stand is free, but an ongoing affair that went on for months and years, there's going to be dinners out. There may be hotel
yeah,
rooms. There's gifts. I mean, these affairs cost real money. And
yeah,
the person engaging in that has to get that money from somewhere where it's not going to be missed. And so if your spouse isn't looking at the finances, it might be easier to do that, but that's where a secret credit card comes in, right? Because you're
yeah.
not seeing the statements for it, et cetera. It's insidious in so many ways. And that's why you can tell I get really wound up about some of this stuff when I talk about it. I get really passionate sounding because it can be so expensive, so damaging, and so damaging to your long-term financial future. I always say to women who are getting divorced, what would an extra $10,000 in your divorce settlement mean to you long-term? That money could be, saved, invested, or it might help towards a down payment on a new home. It might cover expenses
Yeah.
for a few months while you're looking for that next job or something. And so
Yes.
I get really wound up.
It's so, so needed. As in preparation for this episode, I have been studying Tracy and getting to know her work and really seeing all the things that she's doing. And it just is so, so important because they do often go hand in hand. They often do. And I think even though your focus is around divorce, I see this playing out. Like, this is something that has to be addressed, period. Whether you're staying married, whether you're leaving the marriage, this piece of how was it paid for, right?
Right.
It does affect you. It needs to be looked at, right? It needs to be looked at and dealt with, and with a plan in place. I love the proactive ways that we talked about it earlier, but these are things that do often overlap that need to be talked about. And one of the things as a coach in this space that's been so painful for me to see is when my women just think that they have no rights, right? That they have no say. And I love that you are taking this time, that it's your life, right? What you're doing.
My life's work. Absolutely.
Your life's work to educate women. And what a gift. And where were you 10 years ago? Where were you 10 years ago?
What a way to bring it back around. So true.
Oh my goodness. I could have used you 10 years ago. Anyway, so helpful. Now, I want to ask you, we'll wrap up here shortly, but I wanted to ask you, tell my listeners about your divorce money guide. I've seen that floating around. I want to hear more about that. Please share that with my listeners.
Thank you for asking. The Divorce Money Guide is a tool for men and women going through divorce who need to know what's been going on with their money. Most people are going through divorce. The vast majority of them can't afford a forensic accountant and don't need one anyway, because it's probably not all that complicated. So with the Divorce Money Guide, it's an online product that gives videos, worksheets, checklists where I walk you through what's the financial piece of the divorce, what documents do you need, how do you get them, and what do you look for in them once you have them, even if you don't have any accounting or numbers background. And it's not just for people who are getting divorced, it's also being used by women who are considering what happens next. They don't know if they're getting divorced. So, even if you are, healing after infidelity and you're deciding to stay together, but you haven't been involved in the finances, it is a resource that can help you in a really easy, methodical way, get your arms around what's been going on with your money.
And tell me, how empowering is that for these women to wrap their heads around all the money? I want to hear from you on that one.
Well, you're exactly right. If you haven't been involved in the finances and I'm telling you, hey, why don't you go get all your bank statements and have a look at them and see what's been going on? That is overwhelming. And what I find is if that were the task that was given to you, you probably would just throw your hands up and say, I don't know where to begin. But if I can lead someone through, some easy steps to get there, here's what you do. And then next you do this. It has been very empowering. These women saying, oh my God, I had no idea that it was this easy to get my bank statements. I had no idea that he was holding our tax returns hostage and wouldn't let me see them. I had no idea that I could go to the IRS and in 10 minutes, I could have our tax returns in my hands. And maybe I don't even understand anything about tax returns, but the idea that I could get them and have them without him giving me permission or handing them to me is so empowering.
Yes. Something that I coach on often is going all the way to the edge of staying or leaving and seeing every option there, right? Because often what we'll go to the edge of our comfort zone. Oh, that part feels too scary. And then we'll tell ourselves a story. I can't leave because of X, Y, and Z. I can't, right? I can't. And I encourage my clients to go all the way past that, all the way to where they really know all of their options, where they have them laid out in front of them. They know exactly what the financials would look like. They know exactly what they're looking at, right? Where they can live, where they cannot live, what they can do legally in their state, all of the things to really know. And in the end, the marriages that succeed after infidelity are the ones where they have really looked at their options, really seen them. It can feel so scary. Oh my gosh, am I choosing divorce by looking at this? No, right? You are educating yourself on what your options are and then really making a conscious, deliberate choice, which is power, right? To make a choice with your eyes wide open. In the long run, that's better for you to really know with everything on the table, this is what I choose. Rather than because I can't because of this financial situation, I'm going to stay and then resent it. Right? Like that's a recipe for disaster. It's not sustainable over time.
I love that approach.
Yeah, just whether you about your divorce money guide, I love that you mentioned that it's not necessarily just for people who are getting divorced. It's in this space of going, I have no idea about all of these things and I need to wrap my head around it. I need to understand it, right?
Yeah, because there are so many women who are in that position of just not being involved. And there is, again, nothing to be ashamed about that you weren't involved. But I want to give you a framework and a process for chipping away at getting the information that you need in a way that's not overwhelming and doesn't add more drama to whatever it is that you're going through.
Yeah, wonderful. Yes, I think let's put that ways to find you, ways to work with you in the show notes. We'll make sure to do that. Okay, before we wrap up, is there anything else that you would like my listeners to hear? Any parting words?
I have been through hundreds of divorces with women, and I have seen it all when it comes to the money. And I just want you to know, I talk a lot about you could do this, you could do that, protect yourself, get the information. And I recognize that a lot of it is easier to say than it might be to execute, and that this is an overwhelming time. You are going through a lot emotionally, and the money issues make it even harder. And so I don't discount any of that. I just want you to know that you can make it through this. You can understand more about your money. You can take control of your finances. You can get a better settlement in your divorce. There are all sorts of things that are possible for you. And I just hope to be able to support some of you in that.
Thank you. So powerful, so good. I've been looking forward to having you for forever because I know that there's so many of my listeners who absolutely need this. They need your expertise and your wisdom. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for sharing. I'll link it up in the show notes, but can you tell people here also where they can find you?
Yep, super easy. You can go to my website, fraudcoach.com, because I like to say I'm your fraud coach during divorce, but I made a page there for your listeners. It's fraudcoach.com/infidelity. On that page, they're going to find everything that we talked about today. That red flag quiz, if you're wondering whether or not you are at risk of financial infidelity, you can find my book there, Find Me the Money, which we didn't get to, but it's the story of a woman who's getting divorced and her husband has committed financial infidelity and romantic infidelity. And it walks you through how she got her arms around the money. And then the divorce money guide is linked there as well. So fraudcoach.com/infidelity will get you there.
Wonderful. So many amazing resources. Thank you for the work that you do. Thank you for being here. It's been a pleasure to talk with you today.
This has been one of my best conversations. So thanks for having me.
You bet. Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Heal from Infidelity podcast. If you would like to be kept in the know about upcoming free classes, new podcast episodes, and other ways of working with me, go subscribe to my weekly email. You can subscribe at AndreaGiles.com/lies-about-infidelity/. Again, it's AndreaGiles.com/lies-about-infidelity/. I will see you next time.